I was standing in line at a gas station when I saw it. A notification flashed on my phone, one of those auto-generated memories from the cloud. Look back on this day 5 years ago. I tapped it without thinking. The screen filled with a photo of Emily and me grinning at some rooftop bar, cocktails in hand, looking like one of those couples people envy. Young, in love, untouchable. I remembered that night. I remembered thinking that I had everything I could ever want. My stomach twisted. Because now, 5 years later, I was standing in a gas station at 11 p.m., gripping a crumpled receipt in one hand and trying to ignore the fact that my wife hadn't answered my last 3 calls. I paid for my gas and walked out to my car, shoving my phone into my pocket. The night air was heavy, pressing down on me like something tangible. I tried to shake off the feeling, the same one that had been creeping up on me for weeks now. Emily had said she was going out for drinks with her friend Madison. They were supposed to be celebrating something, what, I couldn't remember, and honestly, I doubted Emily could either. I got in my car. My fingers hovered over the ignition. And then, without making a conscious decision, I pulled up Madison's number. I hesitated. Then I called. It rang 3 times before she picked up. Hey, what's up? I could hear the background noise, TV, maybe? Definitely not a bar. Hey, is Emily with you? I kept my voice casual, like I wasn't already bracing for whatever came next. A beat of silence. Too long. Then, no. No hesitation. No confusion. Just a quick, clipped response like she already knew she'd been caught in something. I swallowed. Right? Okay. Thanks. I hung up before she could say anything else. My pulse pounded in my ears. I stared at my phone, at the empty screen, at the last unanswered text I'd sent Emily 3 hours ago. I wasn't stupid. I knew what this looked like. I just needed proof. I threw my car into gear and pulled out of the lot. I wasn't even thinking about where I was going. My hands moved on instinct, my brain catching up a second too late when I realized I was driving toward the Ivy, Emily's favorite spot. Not some trendy nightclub, not the bar she'd said she was going to. No, if she was meeting someone else, it would be there. Took me 12 minutes to get there. I parked across the street, turning off my headlights, my heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. The restaurant's patio was lit by soft golden lights, casting long shadows against the sidewalk. People milled around, laughing, talking, clinking glasses. And then there she was, Emily in that dress. The one I bought her last year, the one she told me she was saving for a special occasion. Her hair was curled the way she only bothered to do for big events. She was leaning across a table, her hand resting lightly on a man's wrist. Not just any man. Brian, my coworker, my friend. I watched them. She laughed at something he said, tilting her head just enough to make her hair fall over one shoulder. He leaned in closer, his hand brushing against her knee under the table. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my nails dug into my palm. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't something I could explain away. She wasn't just cheating. She was doing it right in the open, in our city, wearing a dress I bought her, with a guy who had been in my house, sat on my couch, shaken my hand. And the worst part? She wasn't even trying to hide it. I sat there, frozen, my entire body tense like a live wire. My brain was screaming at me to move, to do something, storm in there, flip the damn table, wipe that smug, lying grin off Brian's face, but I didn't. I couldn't. I just stared, my world narrowing to the two of them. The way she leaned in, the way he touched her arm so casually, like it was normal. Like this wasn't a betrayal, but something they had done 100 times before. I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. Not for myself, I already knew the truth and it was eating me alive, but for whatever came next. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I pulled out my phone, angled the camera just right, and hit record. My hands were steady. My breathing was not. Emily reached across the table, laughing at something Brian said, and took his hand in hers. Not just a friendly touch, an intimate one. The kind of touch that used to be reserved for me. My jaw clenched so tight I thought my teeth might crack. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife even deeper, Brian reached into his pocket, pulled out a hotel key card, and slid it across the table to her. She didn't hesitate. She picked it up, twirling it between her fingers, biting her lip like she was playing some innocent game. I knew that look. I knew what it meant. And that was it. That was all I needed. My chest was tight as I ended the recording. I gripped my phone so hard I thought I might snap it in half. My whole body was buzzing with adrenaline, fury, something dangerously close to rage. But I didn't get out of the car. Not yet. Instead, I watched as they stood up, Brian tossing some cash on the table like the cocky bastard he was. Emily looped her arm through his, laughing as they walked toward the parking lot, toward his car, toward their hotel. I had a choice to make. I could follow them, barge into whatever sleazy hotel room they thought they could hide in, and make a scene. I could scream, throw punches, demand answers. Or I could be smarter than that. I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to think past the anger, past the sheer humiliation clawing at my chest. Emily didn't deserve that kind of reaction from me. No, she deserved worse. She deserved to be blindsided, just like she had blindsided me. So I let them go. I sat there and watched as my wife, the woman who had promised to love me, disappeared into the night with another man. And then, without hesitating, I made a call. Not to Emily, not to Brian, to my lawyer. The call rang twice before a groggy voice answered. Jameson. I glanced at the clock on my dashboard, 11:48 p.m. Too damn late for a casual conversation. But this wasn't casual. Steve, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was still hammering in my chest. I need to talk. There was a pause, then a sigh. Ethan? Man, do you know what time it is? I ignored that. How fast can we file for divorce? That woke him up. I heard rustling on the other end, the sound of a lamp clicking on. What the hell happened? I exhaled, pressing my fingers against my temple. Emily, she's cheating. I have proof. Another pause. Then, sharper this time. How solid? I glanced down at my phone, at the video sitting in my camera roll. Video. Them at the Ivy. Him giving her a hotel key. A low whistle. Damn. Yeah. Damn. Steve was a longtime friend, but more importantly, he was a damn good divorce attorney. The kind that made sure cheating spouses walked away with nothing but regret. And that's exactly what I wanted. He cleared his throat. All right. First thing tomorrow, we start the paperwork. But listen, Ethan, you need to play this smart. No confrontations, no emotional outbursts. If she doesn't know you know, that's an advantage. Use it. I knew he was right. But there was something burning in my chest, something raw and ugly that wasn't satisfied with just lawyers and paperwork. Emily had done this so casually, so shamelessly. Like I was nothing. Like our marriage was disposable. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. I hear you, I said, gripping the wheel. But she's not getting away with this. Steve sighed. Just don't do anything reckless. I didn't answer. I hung up, my mind already spinning. Because I wasn't just going to divorce Emily. I was going to destroy her. I didn't go home that night. Couldn't. The thought of stepping into the house we shared, sleeping in the same bed she'd be crawling into later, probably still smelling like him, made me sick. Instead, I drove to my brother's place. Nathan opened the door, bleary-eyed, shirtless, looking like he was about to curse me out for waking him up, until he saw my face. Jesus, he muttered, stepping aside. What the hell happened to you? I walked in, running a hand through my hair, my whole body tense. Emily, she's cheating. Nathan didn't ask, are you sure? He didn't say maybe there's an explanation. He just closed the door behind me, jaw tight. Who? Brian. His eyebrows shot up. Brian? From your office? The guy who… Yeah. Nathan let out a low whistle, shaking his head. Damn, man. That's brutal. I dropped onto his couch, staring at the ceiling. I'm divorcing her. Good. No hesitation. No sympathy for Emily. Just solid agreement. What's the plan? The plan. I closed my eyes, exhaling through my nose. Steve's handling the legal side. But I'm not just letting her walk away. She wants to humiliate me? Fine. She has no idea what's coming. Nathan sat across from me, watching me carefully. You sure you want to go down that road? I looked at him, my hands clenching into fists. She looked me in the eye and lied. She made a joke about it. Like I was an idiot. Like she'd do it again without regret. Nathan's expression darkened. He didn't need to say anything. He knew exactly what that kind of betrayal felt like. I sat up, my pulse steady now, my mind clearing. I want to time it perfectly. I want her to think she got away with it. A slow smirk crept onto Nathan's face. You're gonna let her dig her own grave. Exactly. And she wouldn't see it coming. I got 2 hours of sleep. Maybe. By the time the sun started creeping through Nathan's blinds, I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of last night over and over in my head. Emily's laugh. Brian's hand on her knee. The way she twirled that hotel key card between her fingers like it was the most natural thing in the world. Like our marriage meant nothing. But today? Today I was done feeling sick over it. Today I was taking control. Nathan was already in the kitchen when I walked out, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. He took one look at me and slid it across the counter. You look like hell. Feel worse, I muttered, taking a sip. The coffee was scalding, but I welcomed the burn. You talked to Steve yet? Yeah. Papers are in motion. I set the cup down, tapping my fingers against the counter. But I need more than just a clean break. I want her to lose. Nathan smirked. You got something in mind? I nodded. She thinks she's untouchable. Thinks she's in control. So I'm going to let her keep thinking that. I'm going to make her comfortable. I lean forward, eyes sharp. And then when she least expects it, I'm going to rip the ground out from under her. Nathan let out a low whistle. Damn. Cold. She deserves worse. I pulled out my phone and stared at Emily's name in my contacts. I needed to play this smart. If I stormed in, confronted her, let my emotions take over, she'd spin it. She'd manipulate, twist, gaslight. I'd seen her do it before. No. I had to make this perfect. So I took a breath, forced my voice into something normal. And then I called her. It rang twice before she picked up. Hey, babe, she answered, voice light, sweet. Fake. Didn't hear you coming last night. I clenched my jaw, forcing down the bitterness crawling up my throat. Yeah, I got caught up with Nathan. Ended up crashing at his place. A pause. A split second too long. Then that's fine. I was exhausted anyway. Exhausted from what, Emily? From him? I exhaled through my nose. Thinking of picking up dinner tonight. Maybe something nice. What do you think? Her response was instant. Oh, actually, I have plans with Madison. Liar. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. Right? Of course. She had no idea I'd already called Madison. Had no idea that I knew. And she sure as hell had no idea what was coming next. Step 1 was simple. I played the perfect husband. For the next week, I was everything Emily could have wanted. Attentive, affectionate, thoughtful. I brought her flowers. Booked us a fancy dinner. Even sent her good morning texts like I used to in the early days of our relationship. She ate it up. It was almost insulting how easy it was. She had no guilt, no hesitation. Just smiles and kisses, acting like she wasn't sneaking around with Brian behind my back. Like she wasn't lying every time she told me she loved me. But I wasn't just watching her. I was gathering proof. I set up an old phone as a voice recorder under the passenger seat of her car. Installed a tiny GPS tracker, one of those discreet ones people use to keep tabs on their kids. And every time she said she was meeting Madison, I already knew exactly where she was going. Brian's apartment. Brian's hotel. Step 2 was harder. I had to act like nothing had changed. Had to let her lie to my face, kiss me goodbye, walk out that door while I already knew where she was going. I had to let the anger sit inside me, let it fuel me, but not let it take control. Because Step 3? Step 3 was the grand finale. And Emily was walking straight into it.by the end of the week. I had everything I needed. The recordings from her car, hours of conversations between her and Brian, filled with laughter, inside jokes, and just enough disgust toward me to make my blood boil. The GPS logs proving every single lie she had told me. And the video? That was just the cherry on top. But it wasn't enough for me to know. It wasn't enough to have the proof sitting on my phone like some ugly little secret. No, Emily needed to feel what I felt. She needed to experience that moment. The stomach drop realization that everything she thought was safe and secure was actually about to come crashing down. She thought she was in control. She thought she had won. She had no idea what was coming. Saturday night. Emily had been in a good mood all day, humming to herself while she got ready. Another girls' night with Madison, according to her. She even kissed me before she left, telling me not to wait up. I almost laughed. She had no idea that I knew exactly where she was headed. No idea that her plans for the night were already ruined. Because Brian, he wasn't going to be there. Not at his apartment. Not at the hotel. Not anywhere near Emily. Because I had already gotten to him first. That morning, I sent Brian a message from Emily's phone. Brian, we need to talk. Meet me at the Ivy at 7. Alone. And because Brian was an arrogant idiot, he didn't even question it. At 6:45 p.m. I was already sitting at the bar, watching the entrance. At 7:03, Brian walked in, scanning the room for a woman who wasn't coming. I let him sit down, let him order a drink. Let him think he was about to have some heartfelt moment with Emily. Then I slid into the seat across from him. His head snapped up, confusion flickering across his face before it settled into something smug. Ethan, he said, leaning back. Didn't expect to see you here. I smiled. Yeah? I figured we should have a little chat. He frowned, but I could see it in his eyes. He still thought he could get out of this. Still thought he could manipulate the situation. I pulled out my phone and placed it on the table between us. Then, without saying a word, I hit play. Emily's voice filled the space between us. God, I don't even feel bad. If I could do it all over again, I would. No regrets. Brian's face changed. Just slightly. Just enough. I leaned in. You and Emily had a good thing going, huh? My voice was even. Almost friendly. Must have felt nice sneaking around behind my back. Sleeping with another man's wife. His throat bobbed. Ethan, man. I didn't let him finish. See, Emily? She thinks she's smart. Thinks she's always one step ahead. But you. I let out a small chuckle. You're just pathetic. Brian's jaw tensed. Look, save it. I cut him off. I don't care about your excuses. I don't care what lies she told you. I do care about what happens next, though. And I'm pretty sure you do too. His fingers curled into fists on the table. What do you want? I smirked. Oh, it's simple. You're going to ghost Emily. No calls, no texts. You're going to block her on everything. And when she tries to find you, you're going to make sure she doesn't. His brows furrowed. Why the hell would I do that? I tilted my head. Because if you don't, I send everything to your boss. Brian paled. You think I'm the only one who'd care about this? What about your company? Your clients? How do you think they'd feel about one of their executives screwing a married woman in cheap hotels? I let the words settle, then lowered my voice. How do you think your fiancé would feel? His entire body stiffened. Yeah. He thought I didn't know about her. Didn't he? I leaned back, stretching lazily. Your move, Brian. He didn't even argue. Didn't try to defend himself. He just sat there, jaw clenched, the weight of it all sinking in. And then, without a word, he stood up and walked out. Game over. At 9 p.m., Emily called me. I let it ring. At 9:10, she sent a text. Hey, Brian's not answering. Have you heard from him? I smiled, typing back. No idea. Weird. At 9:30, she came home. And that's when the real fun began. I was sitting on the couch when she walked in. Emily had her phone in her hand, her brows furrowed in frustration, lips pressed into a thin line. She barely looked at me as she kicked off her heels, already typing something, another text to Brian, I was sure. I just watched. She had no idea what was waiting for her. She let out an annoyed sigh, tossing her phone onto the counter. God, Brian is so unreliable. I almost laughed. The audacity. The sheer lack of shame. She was standing in her home, talking about her affair partner like it was just another minor inconvenience in her day. Like I was some clueless idiot who didn't know exactly what she had been up to. I stayed silent, just watching her move around the kitchen. She poured herself a glass of wine, took a sip, then turned to me, finally acknowledging my presence. You okay? She asked, tilting her head slightly. She was testing me, trying to gauge if anything was off. I smiled. Yeah. Long day. She nodded, seeming satisfied, then sat on the opposite couch, curling her legs under her. What did you do today? I took a slow sip of my drink before answering. Met up with someone. Had a nice little chat. She raised an eyebrow. Oh? Who? I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. Brian. The shift was instant. A split-second flash of something in her eyes, shock, fear, calculation, before she forced a casual laugh. Wait, Brian? My Brian. My Brian. I almost rolled my eyes. Yeah, you're Brian. She sat up straighter, gripping her wine glass tighter. Why were you meeting with Brian? I let the silence stretch, let her sit in the tension. Watched the way her fingers tapped anxiously against the glass. Then I smiled. Oh, you know. Just wanted to let him know I know. I said it so easily, so calmly that it took her a second to process it. But when it clicked, really clicked, I saw it. The panic. The subtle inhale, the way her lips parted slightly like she was about to speak but hadn't figured out the right lie yet. She opened her mouth probably to deny everything, but I held up a finger. Before you start, let me make something very clear, I said, my voice dangerously even. I know. I've known. And not just about last night. About all of it. She blinked. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen. Her voice filled the room. God, I don't even feel bad. If I could do it all over again, I would. No regrets. Emily's face drained of color. I leaned back, watching her. That's you, isn't it? She swallowed. Where did you? I hit play again. Another recording. Brian, you think he suspects anything? Emily, please. Ethan's an idiot. He trusts me completely. Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. She just stared at me, completely still, like a deer caught in headlights. Then finally, she let out a breathy, nervous laugh. Okay. I don't know what you think you heard, but this is taken out of context. I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. Right? So when you said I'd do it again without regret, you actually meant. She opened her mouth, then shut it. I smiled. That's what I thought. Her expression shifted then. The fear melted away, replaced by something uglier. Defensiveness. Anger. She sat up, placing her wine glass down with a loud clink. All right, fine. You want the truth? Yeah. I was with Brian. And? She lifted her chin slightly, her eyes challenging. What are you gonna do about it? I stared at her for a moment, almost in awe of how shameless she was. There was no guilt, no remorse. She wasn't sorry. She was defiant. I let out a slow breath. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope, tossing it onto the table between us. She glanced at it, then back at me. What's this? Divorce papers. For the first time, she actually looked thrown off. Wait, what? I nodded toward the envelope. Already signed. My lawyer has copies. I suggest you read through them carefully. She picked it up with shaky hands, flipping through the pages, her eyes scanning over the text. Her breath hitched. Wait, what is this? Why? Why is my name not on the house? I smirked. Because you don't own it. Her eyes snapped to mine. But we bought it together. I shook my head, enjoying this way too much. No, I bought it. With my money. And I made sure your name was never on the deed. Her lips parted. You tricked me? I chuckled. Oh, sweetheart. I outplayed you. She flipped another page, skimming frantically, her panic growing. Wait, the prenup? I nodded. Yep, enforced. You get nothing. She shook her head, laughing in disbelief. This isn't real. You can't do this. Oh, but I can. And I already did. I stood up, stretching lazily. Your stuff? It's already packed. You have until tomorrow to get it out of my house. She stood up too, slamming the papers onto the table. You can't just kick me out. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Emily, you lost the second you thought I was an idiot. Her breathing was fast, shallow. She was realizing now. Really realizing. But I wasn't done yet. I leaned in, just enough to make sure she heard me loud and clear. Oh, and one more thing, I murmured. Brian? He's done with you. Blocked your number. Ghosted you completely. I grinned, savoring the horror flickering in her eyes. Guess you really did lose everything. She staggered back like I had just slapped her. And me? I just walked past her, grabbed my keys, and headed for the door. I had a celebration to get to. I didn't look back as I walked out the door. I didn't need to. I could feel the weight of Emily's shock hanging in the air behind me. Could practically hear the gears in her head turning as she tried to process what had just happened. She had lost. And she had never expected it. I slid into my car, tossing my phone onto the passenger seat. My hands were steady on the wheel, my breathing even. But inside I was electric. For weeks I had been drowning in this, stuck in the sickening, crushing weight of betrayal. The anger, the hurt, the absolute humiliation of knowing that the woman I had trusted had been laughing behind my back. And not just cheating, no, that would have been one thing. She had mocked me, called me an idiot, told Brian she felt no regret. And now she had nothing. I put the car in drive and pulled away from the house, my house. She could figure out where she was sleeping tonight on her own. I didn't go to Nathan's this time. No, tonight deserved something better. I drove straight to a bar across town. Somewhere I knew Emily would never go. Somewhere fresh, where the air didn't reek of betrayal. I slid onto a bar stool and ordered a whiskey, neat. The bartender, a guy with a shaved head and a tired expression, gave me a once-over before pouring generously. Rough night? He asked. I took a slow sip, feeling the burn. Then I exhaled, setting the glass down with a small smirk. No, I said, savoring the taste. Not anymore. He chuckled and moved on to the next customer. I let my shoulders relax, rolling out the tension that had been sitting there for too long. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for the next lie. Wasn't questioning my own instincts, wondering if I was being paranoid. Wasn't playing the fool while my wife snuck around behind my back. I was free. And damn, did it feel good. I took another sip, glancing around the bar. The place was buzzing with conversation, the low hum of music in the background. And then I caught someone looking at me. A woman sitting a few seats down. She was sipping a cocktail, her dark eyes studying me over the rim of her glass. When our eyes met, she didn't look away. She just raised an eyebrow, amused. I smirked. Bold? I turned slightly toward her, tilting my head. See something you like? She smiled, slow and knowing. Just trying to figure out what kind of night you're having. I chuckled, tapping my fingers against my glass. A damn good one. She leaned forward, resting her elbow on the bar. Yeah? What are we celebrating? I considered my answer for a moment. Then, with a slow grin, I lifted my glass. The end of a mistake. She laughed, warm and genuine. Now that sounds like a story. I took another sip, my smirk deepening. Oh, I said, leaning in slightly. You have no idea. The woman across from me swirled the ice in her drink, still watching me with that sharp, amused gaze. She was the kind of woman who could spot a story from a mile away, and she knew I had one. I debated telling her. Not because I needed validation, I didn't. But because saying it out loud, sharing it with someone who had no connection to Emily, no connection to my old life, felt like the final nail in the coffin. Like once the words left my mouth, it would be real. The last step in washing my hands of her completely. And damn, did I want that. So I smirked, took another sip of whiskey, and set the glass down with a soft clink. You ever hear one of those stories that sounds too crazy to be true? Her lips curled into a smile. Those are the best kind. I exhaled, shaking my head slightly. All right, let's start with this. I was married. Her eyebrows lifted slightly. Was? I nodded. Past tense. As of about an hour ago. She leaned in a little. Let me guess. She cheated? Bingo. I tilted my head. What gave it away? She shrugged, resting her chin on her hand. The way you walked in. Relaxed, but relieved. Like someone who just dropped a lot of dead weight. I let out a low chuckle. Dead weight. Perfect description. Yeah, I said. She cheated. And she thought she got away with it. I paused, my smirk widening. Until tonight. Her smile turned wicked. Oh, this just got interesting. I took my time with the story. I told her how I found out. How I let Emily think she was still in control, still playing her little game while I was setting up the perfect checkmate. I told her about Brian, his arrogance, his stupidity, the way he folded the second I put pressure on him. And I told her about tonight. The confrontation. The divorce papers. The moment Emily finally realized she wasn't walking away with anything but regret. By the time I finished, she was grinning, shaking her head in disbelief. Damn, she murmured. That is beautiful. I laughed. Glad someone appreciates it. Oh, trust me, I appreciate it. She lifted her glass. To being smarter than the people who underestimate you. I clinked my glass against hers. To that. We drank. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't thinking about Emily. I wasn't wondering what she was doing, who she was with, what new lie she was spinning. She wasn't my problem anymore. And that was the best damn feeling in the world. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. No tension in my chest. No pit in my stomach. No nagging voice in the back of my mind, whispering doubts about where my wife was, who she was with, what lies she was telling me, because Emily wasn't my problem anymore. I stretched, rolling my shoulders as I sat up on Nathan's couch. My phone buzzed on the table beside me. I knew who it would be before I even looked. Emily. I let it ring. Then a text came through. Emily, we need to talk. I smirked. No hate, babe. No pretending everything was fine. She wasn't trying to charm her way out of this because she knew she couldn't. I didn't respond. I leaned back, tossing my phone onto the couch. Nathan walked into the living room, scratching the back of his head. You look way too happy for a guy who just torched his marriage. I exhaled. It wasn't a marriage. Not really. Nathan flopped into the chair across from me, smirking. So what now? Good question. For weeks, my entire focus had been on this. On catching Emily, on setting her up, on making sure she felt the consequences of what she did. Now that it was over, now that she was out of my life. What was next? I thought about the woman from the bar last night. The way she had laughed, clinked her glass against mine, called my revenge beautiful. Maybe I'd see her again. Maybe I wouldn't. It didn't matter. Because for the first time in a long time, my future was mine. And I wasn't wasting another damn second on Emily. I didn't respond to Emily's text. I didn't need to. She knew what had happened. She knew she had lost. And now she was scrambling, grasping for something, anything, to pull herself out of the hole she had dug. Maybe she thought she could still talk her way out of it. Maybe she thought she could cry, beg, twist the story into something that made her the victim. But it was over. She just hadn't accepted it yet. I stood up, stretching as I grabbed my phone and keys. Nathan watched me from the couch, raising an eyebrow. You leaving? I nodded. Yeah. Got things to do. He smirked. Translation, you're finally moving the hell on. Damn right. I stepped outside, taking a deep breath. The air was crisp, fresh. It felt different. Because for the first time in years, I was free. Emily wasn't done yet, though. By noon, she had called 6 more times. By 2 p.m., she had left me 4 voicemails. By 5 p.m., she showed up at my door. I opened it slowly, taking in the sight of her. She was wearing one of my old hoodies, probably on purpose, some pathetic attempt to remind me of us. Her hair was pulled back, her face was bare, no makeup. A calculated move. She wanted to look raw, vulnerable. Too bad I didn't give a damn. Ethan, she started, her voice soft. So soft. Can we just talk? I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my arms. Talk about what, Emily? Her eyes flicked up to mine, searching for something, some crack, some sign that I wasn't really done. Everything happened so fast. I feel like we need to have a real conversation. I huffed out a laugh. A real conversation? You mean like the ones we should have had before you started sneaking around behind my back? She flinched. I held up a hand. Save it. You're not here because you're sorry, Emily. You're here because you lost. Brian dumped you, you don't have the house, and now you're looking for a way out of the mess you made. Her jaw tightened. That's not fair. I smirked. No? Because from where I'm standing, it looks pretty damn fair. She let out a breath, her hands clenching into fists. And then, just like that, the mask slipped. You think you won? She snapped, her voice dripping with venom. You think you're better than me just because you caught me first? I tilted my head. You admitted you'd do it again without regret, Emily. You never expected me to fight back. Her lips curled. And what now, Ethan? You gonna go play the heartbroken ex-husband? Tell everyone how awful I was. I grinned. No, Emily. I'm not heartbroken. I'm celebrating. Her nostrils flared. You're pathetic. I chuckled. And you're homeless. That shut her up. She glared at me, eyes blazing, but she had nothing left to say. Because deep down she knew. She had underestimated me. Thought she could walk all over me and come out clean. And now? She was standing in front of me with nothing. I took a step back. I think we're done here. Her mouth opened, one last attempt to get the last word, to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. I shut the door in her face. That was the last time I ever saw Emily. I didn't check in on her. Didn't wonder where she went, who she turned to, what lies she told herself to make it through the night. She wasn't my problem anymore. A week later, my divorce was finalized. 2 weeks later, I quit my job. Moved cities. Started fresh. And 6 months later? I was sitting in a cafe, sipping my coffee, when I heard a familiar laugh. I turned. The woman from the bar. She grinned when she saw me, raising an eyebrow. Fancy meeting you here. I smirked. Maybe it's fate. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back.